She stood there holding the cleaning cloth in her hand, staring at the floor so no one would see her eyes. The guests laughed around the dining table. They acted like she was furniture, not a person. And then he said it, clear, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Relax. She's not even attractive. No one here is looking at the maid." The room fell silent. Her heart broke, but her hands did not shake. She simply turned and kept working. What he didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that she was the one person who would change his entire life, and she would not even have to try. Before we go deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time it is there. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you never miss stories like this one. Stay with me. This is about to unfold slowly and beautifully. Liana Brooks had learned long ago that dignity didn't always come with comfort. Sometimes it came with scrubbing floors after midnight, or stretching one meal across 2 days, or pretending not to hear the hospital billing department when they called again. The bus rolled through Chicago's north side, past glass towers and high-raised balconies that caught the morning light. She stayed quiet, hands folded in her lap, her worn canvas bag at her feet. Inside it, neatly folded, a plain white shirt, black pants, soft-soled shoes. Maid uniform, nothing more. She never cared about fancy things. She cared about Tasha. Her little sister was waiting back in their small apartment, curled up on the couch, wrapped in blankets and soft music. Doctors said the condition was manageable with proper medication and care. That was the phrase they used, as if care was something you could just pick up off the shelf. Medication wasn't the problem. Paying for it was. So when she heard there was a housekeeping job in Lakeview, she didn't hesitate. People whispered about the owner of the mansion, cold, private, wealthy enough to buy blocks of the city without blinking. They said he didn't like disruptions. They said no one lasted long. Liana didn't care how difficult the job was. She needed the pay. When the bus stopped, she stepped out and followed the long private street leading to the Hale estate. The mansion rose in front of her, all stone and glass, quiet as a cathedral. She paused at the gate, took a breath, and pressed the call button. A voice came through. "Name?" "Liana Brooks. I'm here for the housekeeper position." The gate unlocked without another word. Inside, the air smelled like lemon wood polish and fresh coffee. The kitchen alone was bigger than her entire apartment. She stood straight, chin tucked down, hands loosely clasped, respectful, not timid. Another maid, older and sharp-eyed, handed her a list. "If you work carefully, you'll do fine," she said. Her voice carried a warning she didn't try to hide. Liana began. Floors first, always the floors. She worked quietly, moving from room to room. Large windows, marble counters, art pieces she didn't understand. Everything in the mansion had been chosen to look untouched, like no one had ever lived there at all. Hours passed in silence. Then voices drifted from the dining room, male, confident, certain of himself. Another male voice laughed. "You're impossible, Carter. You act like women don't exist." And then the voice that ruled this house replied, smooth as glass, "I just prefer not to bother with distractions. And before you ask, no, the new maid isn't attractive. No one here is looking at her." Someone snickered. Chairs shifted. Silverware clinked. Liana kept wiping the counter. Her face did not change. Her cheeks did not flush. Only her heart moved, quietly. She finished the kitchen, set everything back in place, and continued on to the next room as if she hadn't heard anything at all. But upstairs, in a room with tall windows and quiet air, the man who had spoken, Carter Hale, paused. He realized he remembered the color of her eyes. Yet he had not looked at her twice. Carter Hale had lived most of his life surrounded by noise, deals, negotiations, the constant press of people who wanted something. Silence to him was a privilege earned. So the mansion stayed quiet, controlled, predictable, which was why he noticed when the atmosphere shifted. It happened slowly. The house felt steadier. The staff moved more efficiently. Things were put away without him asking. There were fresh flowers in the hallway vase, the kind that matched the season rather than the decorator's year-old order list. None of this was remarkable enough to acknowledge out loud, but he noticed. The way one notices when something small is missing or has been added without permission. He didn't think of the new maid. He had dismissed her the moment he learned her name. Another temporary worker filling space. People rotated in and out of his orbit like clockwork. None of them stayed long enough to remember, but the change in the house was undeniable. Late afternoon light poured into the foyer when he finally saw her, not by intention, but by timing. She was kneeling near the staircase, wiping down the bottom banister trim, not rushed, not slow, just steady, patient, focused. She looked up only long enough to acknowledge that someone had walked by, then returned to her task. No stare, no smile, no attempt to impress. Just work. Carter stopped walking for a fraction of a second, barely noticeable, a break in rhythm. She did not look up again. His assistant, Brooks Dalton, stepped beside him. "That's the new hire," Brooks said, voice bored. "Brooks, something. Started last week." Carter answered, already moving again. But something lingered. He glanced back once, just once. Liana didn't see it. The next morning, Carter rose earlier than usual. No real reason, just awake. The house was quiet, the way he liked it. He crossed the kitchen to make coffee himself, but someone was already there. Liana. She was wiping down the counter, her hair tied back loosely. She didn't jump when she realized he was in the room. She didn't rush to greet him. She simply stepped aside so he could reach the cabinet. "Good morning," she said softly, voice steady. He didn't respond right away, not out of rudeness, but because he wasn't used to someone speaking to him without expectation attached. Finally, he nodded once. "Morning." The word felt unfamiliar in his mouth. Liana poured cleaning solution into a small bowl. The scent of lavender rose into the quiet air. Carter watched her hands for a moment, small, steady, precise, then turned away. He didn't realize she had noticed, but she had. Not the gaze, not the hesitation, the silence of a man who was not used to being seen. Downstairs in the laundry room, two housemaids whispered, "He didn't ignore her. He ignores everyone. You saw it too. Don't be ridiculous." They looked toward the hallway, where Liana walked past them without a word, her face unreadable, but even she could feel it. The shift had begun. Days moved with a steady rhythm. Liana worked the same way she breathed, quietly, consistently, without drawing attention to herself. She remembered every detail of the house, the slight squeak in the third stair, the way the windows streaked in the afternoon light, the guest bathroom drawer that never stayed closed unless nudged twice. She didn't rush. She didn't waste movement. She simply did the job. And the mansion changed because of it. Fresh flowers reappeared weekly, simple ones, wildflowers in clear glass vases, not expensive, not arranged by a florist, but placed where the eye rested naturally. The house was cleaner, yes, but it also felt lived in, like someone cared for it, not just tended to it. The staff noticed. Carter noticed more, not openly, not verbally, but he saw. He saw how the kitchen stayed spotless even during breakfast rush. He saw how the laundry folded into neat, warm stacks that looked like home rather than a hotel. He saw the way the curtains were tied to let in more natural light. Small details, tiny changes, a presence soft enough to miss, but impossible to ignore. One afternoon, Carter walked into the sitting room and paused. A framed photograph on the shelf had been dusted and placed upright. It had been crooked for months, leaning slightly as if forgotten. The image was of his father. Carter's jaw tightened. No one touched that shelf. No one dared. But the photograph hadn't been moved with disregard. It had been cleaned, centered, respected. Liana hadn't known the story behind it. She didn't need to. She only knew it was something someone had cared about once, and so she cared too. Carter didn't speak about it. He didn't thank her. He simply walked out of the room with a silence that felt heavier than footsteps. In the evening, rain tapped against the tall windows. The staff had gone for the day, except for those who lived in smaller quarters behind the property, Liana included. She preferred the quiet. Night shifts meant less interaction, fewer chances to be spoken to like she was furniture. She was rinsing a cloth at the sink when Carter entered the kitchen again. No footsteps heard, just his presence appearing behind her like a shadow sliding into light. She stepped aside automatically. He poured a glass of water. Neither spoke. But silence is not always empty. Sometimes it carries everything unspoken between two people. After a moment, he set the glass down. "What time did you start today?" he asked. She didn't look up. 6. "That's early. I needed to finish the guest suite before lunch service." "You could have asked for assistance." She blinked once, not in surprise, but in quiet understanding of the kind of man he was. "I don't mind hard work, Mr. Hale." There was no bitterness, no pride, just simple truth. Carter didn't respond, but his hand tightened around the edge of the counter, just slightly. Liana wrung out the cloth, hung it neatly, turned to leave. Before she stepped out, he spoke again. "What is your name?" She paused. He had said it before, on paper, in instruction, but he had never asked. "Liana," she said gently. "Liana Brooks." He repeated it, not loud, not quiet, but clearly. "Liana." She left the kitchen. Carter remained where he stood, staring at the glass of water, realizing his chest felt tight, and not knowing why. The next week passed with the same rhythm, mornings of sunlight drifting across polished floors, evenings softened by quiet footsteps, and the low hum of appliances settling into night. Nothing dramatic happened. And yet something was changing. Carter felt it whenever he walked into a room she had just left. A trace of lavender, a shift in energy, a gentleness his life had never made room for. He didn't name the feeling. Men like him were not taught to name things like that. But the silence between them had grown warmer. One night, long after the rest of the staff had gone, Liana remained in the kitchen, counting tips she had earned from a catered event earlier. $27, enough for part of Tasha's medication. Not all of it. She folded the bills, held them a moment, then set them inside her bag. The phone rang. Her body tensed before she answered. "Hello?" A pause. A voice on the other end, tired, concerned. "How is she tonight?" Liana asked, her tone soft but strained. She listened quietly, her eyes lowered, her shoulders slightly bowed. "I'll be home soon. Just keep her comfortable. I'll figure out the rest." The call ended. Liana pressed her palms to the counter, head bent. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't break. She simply let one tear fall and wiped it away before anyone could see. But someone did. Carter had stepped into the hallway, unseen, unnoticed. He had not meant to listen, but the stillness of the house made everything impossible to ignore. He saw her breathe in slow, steadying breaths, gather herself, and return to cleaning like nothing had happened. No complaint. No collapse, just resilience. He had witnessed strength his entire life, but never this kind. Not the loud, conquering kind, the quiet, enduring kind, the kind that did not demand to be seen. He should have walked away. He told himself to. Instead, he found himself speaking. "Brooks," he said from the doorway. Liana straightened instantly, shoulders squared. She did not wipe another tear. She did not apologize. She simply turned to face him. "Yes, Mr. Hale?" He opened his mouth, but the words did not form. He didn't know why he had spoken. He didn't know what he meant to ask. So he said nothing. He just stood there, caught between two instincts. Distance. And something else he did not recognize. Liana waited. Not nervous, not expectant, simply present. When he didn't speak, she nodded once. "Good night, Mr. Hale." She walked past him, steps gentle on the polished floor. Carter remained still long after she had gone. He realized something unsettling. For the first time in years, he felt like he was the one being seen. The invitation list had been finalized weeks ago. City officials, philanthropists, business partners, and socialites who valued appearances more than sincerity. The Hale Mansion would host a charity gala for a children's hospital downtown. The kind of event where people donated money to feel moral for a night and left before dessert if the wine wasn't expensive enough. The staff prepared all morning. Polished silver, ironed linens, arranged hors d'oeuvres into perfect spirals. Liana worked quietly among them, her movements steady and precise, never needing instruction twice. By evening, the chandeliers glowed with warm gold light. Cars lined the driveway. Camera flashes sparked outside like restless stars. Liana was assigned to the dining hall, tray service, minimal interaction, always keep to the edges. She wore the standard uniform, simple and unadorned, her hair pulled back, no makeup, the kind of presentation meant to be invisible. Guests drifted in, laughing too loudly, drinking too early. They filled the room with perfume, wealth, and assumption. Carter entered last. A tailored black suit, posture straight, expression unreadable. The room shifted subtly when he arrived, not because he demanded attention, but because people like him were trained to command it without effort. He greeted a senator with a brief handshake, nodded toward familiar faces. His tone remained courteous, detached, practiced. Liana moved between tables, offering champagne flutes to gloved hands and jeweled wrists. No one looked at her. That was expected, but Carter did. Not obviously, not fully. He simply knew where she was at every moment, even while speaking to others. The awareness unsettled him, though he would never admit it. A woman in a diamond necklace leaned toward her friend, voice just loud enough to ripple outward. "Can you believe he keeps staff like that? So plain." Needles could not cut sharper. Her friend smirked. "Well, men like him don't need pretty help. They buy beauty when they want it." Liana did not react. She kept pouring water. The tray remained steady in her hand, but the words landed. They always did. Across the room, Carter heard the tone, if not the exact words. He saw Liana's shoulders draw inward, not in weakness, but in quiet endurance. His jaw tightened. He crossed the room, fast enough to be noticed, slow enough to appear intentional. He stopped beside the two women, polite smile in place. "Thank you both for attending tonight," he said, voice smooth, the kind that made people straighten their posture without knowing why. "But I'll remind everyone, my staff is not here to be discussed. They are here because they are good at what they do." The women froze. Embarrassment colored their cheeks. Liana did not look up. She did not need rescue, but she had been seen. Carter moved on, as if the remark had cost him nothing. But it had. There was a rule he lived by, unspoken and firm. Never defend what you do not value. And yet he had. From the far side of the room, Brooks Dalton watched. His expression was mild. His eyes were not. He had seen the shift too. Liana continued working, expression unchanged, but her heartbeat moved differently now, not because of the insult, but because someone powerful had chosen to acknowledge her existence when silence would have been easier. She didn't know what that meant. Carter didn't either. But the house felt different for the rest of the night. The following morning came gray and cool, rain misting softly against the windows. The house was quiet after the chaos of the night before. Most staff moved slower than usual, tired from hours of serving and cleaning. Liana was in the study, polishing the carved oak desk. The wood held years of use, scratches, faint marks, ghosts of hands that once leaned in thought. She worked in slow, steady circles, breathing evenly. The door to the study was partially open. Voices drifted through the hallway, low at first, then clearer as footsteps approached. Brooks Dalton's tone was sharp, amused. "You're slipping, Carter. I mean, really? Defending the maid in front of half the donors?" He laughed, like the idea itself was ridiculous. Carter's response came quieter but edged. "Drop it, Brooks." "No, really. Are we doing this now? Should I be worried? You falling for the help?" He chuckled again. "Don't tell me you've developed a taste for plain." Plain. The word hit the air like a stone thrown at glass. Liana did not move. Her hands continued polishing, but her breath caught, just once. Carter didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched long enough to make Brooks shift his weight. Then Carter spoke. "Watch your mouth." Brooks laughed again, lighter this time, but there was something beneath it. Sharp, calculating. "Relax. I'm only saying what everyone else sees. She isn't your type. She isn't anyone's type." Liana stopped. Not dramatically, not visibly, just enough. Her hand rested on the cloth. Her shoulders straightened the smallest bit. Carter saw. He had walked into the study without realizing she was inside. His gaze met hers for the first time without distraction, without distance, without the walls he kept around himself. He did not speak. He did not apologize. He simply held her eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. Not attraction, not sentiment, recognition. Brooks followed Carter's gaze and finally noticed her. His smirk faded, only for a second. "Well?" He cleared his throat, straightened his suit jacket. "I have a call to make." He left. The study fell silent. Liana folded the cloth carefully, placing it beside the wood polish. She did not look at Carter again. There was nothing to say. She began to turn toward the door. "Liana." Her name sounded strange coming from him, like it had weight now. She paused, not facing him, not running, just waiting. Carter's voice lowered, not soft, not emotional, but steady. "You don't have to tolerate disrespect in this house." She considered that, then answered evenly, "I don't tolerate it. I simply don't absorb it." She walked out. Carter remained still, staring at the door after it closed. Brooks' words echoed. Not the insult, the implication. "She isn't your type." He couldn't answer that, because for the first time in years, he could not predict his own next thought. The next days moved differently. Liana worked with the same steady grace as always, no wasted motion, no changed expression, but the house felt as if it were holding its breath. The staff noticed that Carter passed through rooms more often when she was in them, not to speak, not to linger, just there, a presence. He watched the way she folded linens so they stacked without shifting. He noticed how she carried trays without rattling a single glass. He saw how she listened when others spoke, not to respond, but to understand. She did everything quietly, and that quietness pulled at him like a tide. But Liana did not acknowledge his attention. She had learned long ago not to reach for what was not offered with intention. The distance between them grew heavier, not cold, not tense, just aware. One afternoon, Liana stepped outside to sweep the back terrace. The autumn wind moved through the trees, brushing leaves across stone. The air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. Carter walked out behind her. She didn't turn. There was no need. "Brooks has been reassigned," he said. Liana paused only long enough to finish sweeping one last line before lowering the broom. "That wasn't necessary," she said. "It was," he replied. She looked at the leaves. He looked at her. Silence again, not empty, full. Then she spoke, not unkindly. "I don't want trouble in your home." Carter's jaw tightened. Not in anger, something else, something quieter. "You haven't caused any," he said. "Not once." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of falling rain. Liana nodded, accepting his words, not holding them, not rejecting them, just acknowledging truth. She turned to return inside, but Carter stopped her, not with touch, but with words he didn't plan to say. "I see you, Liana." Her steps slowed, just for a moment, just enough. She did not turn back. She simply continued into the house, the broom resting light against her shoulder. And that was when Carter realized the most startling part. He wasn't frustrated because she had walked away. He was frustrated because he wanted her to stay. That night, after the rest of the staff had gone to their quarters, Liana sat at the small desk in her room behind the garden, sorting through medical invoices. Numbers that didn't add up, costs that didn't stop. The weight of them pressed on her shoulders, though she did not cry this time. She placed one hand over Tasha's photo. A promise. Silent. The knock on her door was quiet. She looked up, already knowing who it was, not by sound, but the way silence followed him. She opened the door. Carter stood there. No suit jacket, no guarded expression. Just a man who finally understood the cost of looking at someone and truly seeing them. He didn't speak right away. Neither did she. The space between them finally held more than silence. It held possibility. Liana didn't invite him inside. She didn't step back. She simply waited, her hand still resting lightly on the edge of the doorway. Carter had never struggled for words. Not in boardrooms, not in interviews, not in front of people who measured his worth by the way he spoke. But now, with this woman who asked for nothing, everything he could say felt too heavy or too small. "I noticed you didn't come in for dinner," he finally said. "I wasn't hungry," she answered. But they both knew hunger had nothing to do with it. His gaze lowered for a moment, brief, controlled, before returning to hers. "You shouldn't have to work a full day and go without eating." Her voice remained calm. "It's not your responsibility to worry about me." Carter exhaled slowly. The air felt too tight in his chest. "Maybe it is," he said. Not loudly, not urgently, just honestly. Liana's eyes softened, not in acceptance, but in understanding of what it cost him to say that there were footsteps approaching down the corridor. Soft, hesitant, carrying someone who did not belong in that hallway at this hour. Carter's mother, Evelyn Hale, appeared at the far end, wearing a silk robe and a look that cooled the air around her. Her gaze flicked from Carter to Liana, reading more in a second than either of them had spoken aloud. "Carter," she said, her tone smooth like polished stone. "It's late." It was not a reminder. It was a warning. He didn't turn to her. He didn't step back. For the first time, he did not hide the moment he was in. "I'm aware," he replied. Evelyn's eyes shifted to Liana, measuring, calculating, dismissing. "You're needed early in the morning," she told Liana. "You should rest." The words were polite, the meaning was not. Liana held Evelyn's gaze without flinching. "Yes, ma'am." She didn't look at Carter again, not out of fear, but because she understood when a moment was not hers to fight. She closed the door gently, not a retreat, a choice. The hallway held silence. Evelyn's voice returned first. "She does not belong anywhere near this family. You know that." Carter didn't look at her. "You don't know her." His mother's expression did not change. "I don't need to know her. I know her position." Carter turned his head just slightly, enough to let cold steel edge into his voice. "Positions can change." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke the words she knew would strike deepest. "You are your father's son." She walked away, leaving the hallway colder than she found it. Inside her room, Liana sat back down at the small desk. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She had lived a lifetime in rooms where she was told she did not belong. But one thing had changed tonight. Somebody had seen her and chosen to stand still, not save her, not speak for her, simply see her. And sometimes that was enough to shift the entire world. In the main house, Carter stood at the window overlooking the garden. He watched the lights in Liana's quarters fade to darkness. He told himself he was only checking the view. He knew better. He leaned one hand against the glass, the reflection of the night staring back at him. Finally, he understood the truth he had been avoiding. He didn't want her to leave. He didn't know what it meant yet. But he knew this. He would not let her disappear from his life the way everything meaningful once had. Not again. Morning sunlight fell sharp and clear through the mansion windows. The housekeeper's bells rang early, too early. Word spread that Mrs. Hale wanted the staff gathered in the main hall before breakfast. Liana stood in line with the others, hands folded neatly. She had worked late, barely slept. Still, her uniform was pressed, her posture straight. Evelyn Hale appeared at the top of the staircase, dressed in pale blue, diamonds flashing at her throat. Her expression didn't need words to command obedience. "I appreciate all of you for keeping this household presentable," she began. "However, I value discipline over convenience. There have been changes in how some of you conduct yourselves. That ends today." Her eyes swept the line until they landed on Liana. They stayed there. "Professional distance must be maintained at all times," Evelyn said. "The Hales are private people. We expect privacy to be respected." Liana's heart beat once, hard, before returning to its rhythm. She nodded slightly. "Yes, ma'am." Evelyn smiled, a smile made of glass. "Good. I trust there will be no misunderstandings." Then she turned, her perfume trailing behind her like a signature. The staff began to disperse. Liana stayed still until the hallway cleared. She walked to the service door quietly, the words still echoing in her head. Professional distance. Later that afternoon, Carter returned from a business trip. He found the house silent, the kind of silence that felt deliberate. "Where's Brooks?" he asked one of the footmen. "Mr. Dalton left for New York, sir. Your mother handled arrangements." Handled. That word told him everything. He went looking for Liana. She was outside, hanging fresh linens to dry, her hands steady despite the wind tugging at the corners. "Why did she call a staff meeting?" he asked. Liana kept working. "She wanted to remind us of boundaries." His jaw tightened. "She spoke to you?" "She spoke to everyone." But they both knew the truth. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't have to listen to her." Liana glanced up, meeting his eyes. "She's your mother. That doesn't make her right." Liana smiled faintly. "It makes her powerful, and that's enough." She turned back to the sheets, pinning them one by one, the white fabric snapping softly in the wind. Carter wanted to say more, to tell her she wasn't just part of the staff, that what he felt wasn't something he could reason away, but he stopped himself. Words could ruin what silence had built. He stood there for a while, watching her work. Finally, Liana spoke again, her tone quiet, almost kind. "You shouldn't be out here, Mr. Hale. Someone might see." He nodded once. "Let them." She looked at him for a long moment, then returned to her task. Carter left before he could change his mind. That evening, Evelyn waited for him in the study. The fireplace glowed, her drink untouched. "You need to control yourself," she said evenly. "That girl is clever. They all are. You give them kindness. They think it's an invitation." Carter leaned against the doorframe. "She's not like that." Evelyn's smile was patient, pitying. "They never are, until they are." He turned to go, but her final words followed him out of the room. "She'll leave, Carter, one way or another. Don't make it harder than it has to be." Outside, rain began to fall again. Liana stood beneath the covered walkway, watching droplets blur the garden lights. She thought of all the places she'd cleaned that day, rooms filled with beauty, but no warmth. She wondered what kind of life could look perfect and still feel so lonely. She didn't know he was standing by the window upstairs, thinking the same thing. Rain came down hard the next morning, rattling against the glass like fingertips trying to get inside. The house was dim, quiet, slower than usual. Some days had weight without reason. This was one of them. Carter sat in his office with the door closed, paperwork untouched. His pen rested against a blank page. For the first time in years, he could not force his thoughts into order. His life had always been measured in clear terms: assets, decisions, outcomes. But now his mind kept circling back to the sound of a soft voice in a hallway, to hands that carried strain without complaint, to eyes that did not look at him with admiration or fear, just recognition. It was unfamiliar and unsettling. He stood and walked out before he could think better of it. Liana was in the laundry room, folding freshly dried linens. The room was warm, smelling faintly of lavender soap and cotton. She folded each sheet with precision, corner to corner, smooth, exact. Not rushed, not distracted. Present. Carter paused in the doorway. He didn't speak. He just watched the way she worked. Hands steady, breathing calm. She gave the ordinary its dignity. Finally, she looked up. There was no surprise in her expression, almost like she had known he would come, not because of him, but because days have patterns you can feel before they happen. "Do you need something, Mr. Hale?" she asked. "No," he said, then corrected himself. "Yes, actually." She waited. "I haven't thanked you," he said, "for how you take care of this house." Her hands paused over the linen for only a fraction of a second. Not enough for most people to notice, but he did. "You don't need to thank me," she said. "It's my job." "No," he answered softly. "You do more than your job." Silence settled between them like a breath held carefully. Liana resumed folding. "It matters to me," Carter said quietly. This time she did look at him fully. Her eyes were steady, unguarded, and he realized something. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He wasn't trying to impress, persuade, or convince. He simply wanted her to know. She nodded once, not in dismissal, but in acceptance. "Thank you," she said. 2 words, small, but they settled in his chest with the weight of something real. Later, after she left the room, Carter noticed something on the laundry counter, a small prescription bottle, the label worn, the quantity low. Tasha Brooks. Take twice daily. He didn't touch the bottle. He didn't move it. He didn't take a picture, write a note, or call anyone. He just stood there, the air thinning around him, understanding more in one quiet moment than most people learn in years. Liana never complained, never asked for help, never tried to draw attention. She carried her world alone, and something in him shifted. Not pity, not guilt, something deeper. Something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long, long time. Care. Upstairs the rain continued, steady, unbroken. Downstairs a single sheet rested folded perfectly, waiting to be put away. And in the space between those 2 ordinary things, something irreversible had begun. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the world washed clean, the sky pale and open. The mansion was quiet in a way that felt expectant, as though it knew something had shifted beneath its walls. Carter was reviewing contracts in the study when a call came from his head of staff. "There's an issue with Ms. Brooks's employment file," the woman said, voice uncertain. "Some of the documentation looks altered." Carter straightened. "Altered how?" "It lists multiple disciplinary warnings, requests for reassignment, claims of misconduct, a beat. But I was there. None of those things happened." His jaw tightened. "Who processed the paperwork?" There was a long silence on the other end. "You already know, sir." "Brooks Dalton." Carter found Brooks in the West Wing office, sleeves rolled up, leaning casually against the desk. "Morning," Brooks said, as though nothing were wrong. Carter shut the door behind him. "You forged employment records." Brooks smiled, but his eyes did not. "I corrected a problem before it became one." "What problem?" Carter asked. Brooks shrugged lightly. "The problem that you've become distracted." Carter's hands curled at his sides. "You think she's a threat?" "I think," Brooks replied slowly, "that you don't see what's happening. You're letting the help into your head, into your life." His voice sharpened. "Into your decisions." There it was, not jealousy, possession. Carter kept his voice controlled. You don't get to decide who matters in this house. Brooks laughed softly, shaking his head. No, Carter. You don't get to pretend your life can include someone like her. You live in a different world. She's temporary, replaceable, forgettable. The words hung in the air like smoke. Carter didn't move, but the room felt smaller. You will correct the record, he said. And if I don't? Brooks asked. Carter looked at him, really looked. This was the man who had stood beside him for 10 years. This was the man he had trusted. This was the man who believed loyalty was something only money deserved. There were choices that closed the door behind them forever. Carter spoke quietly. Then you no longer work for me. Brooks's expression flickered, only for a second. Then hard laughter filled the room. You're serious, he said. Over a maid? Carter didn't answer. He didn't have to. Silence carried his decision. Brooks' voice dropped to something colder. She will ruin you, just like your father was ruined. But Carter didn't flinch this time. Leave the keys, he said. Brooks stared at him, something dark burning behind his eyes. Then he placed the keys on the desk, walked past him, and left the room without another word. Downstairs, Liana was wiping down the kitchen counter when she saw Brooks leaving the house through the front doors. He didn't look back. She didn't ask why, but she felt the shift all the way down to her bones. Someone had been removed, because of her, and that was not a small thing. She stood very still, the cloth resting in her hand. The house was changing. The world she had learned to stay invisible inside of was beginning to turn toward her. And now, whether she wanted to or not, she was seen. The afternoon moved slowly, like the day itself was holding its breath. The house was quieter now, without Brooks' voice cutting through rooms and hallways. It felt different, less sharp, less calculated. Liana swept the back steps, the brush gliding across stone, gathering leaves that the wind had tossed in curves and swirls. The sky was clear, the kind of clear that came after storms, gentle, washed, honest. Carter stepped outside. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. She felt his presence the way one feels a shift in temperature. I'm sorry, he said. Not for what he had done, for what she had endured. Liana set the broom aside. She didn't fidget. She didn't avoid his eyes. For what? For letting things happen that should not have, he said. He stood with his hands in his pockets, not because he was casual, but because he didn't know what else to do with them. Brooks is gone, he said. She nodded once, no triumph, no relief, just acknowledgement. I didn't ask for that, she said. I know. Silence settled between them, steady, not empty. But I won't pretend he didn't matter to you, she continued. Losing someone like that leaves a mark. Carter looked at her, surprise flickering behind his eyes, not because she was wrong, but because she had seen something most people never noticed. He was my friend, he said. And you chose something that mattered more than him, she replied. Her voice held no accusation, only truth. Carter looked down at the ground, jaw tightening. He exhaled slowly, the breath leaving him like weight. He didn't answer, because there was nothing to defend. Liana turned to go back inside. Wait. She paused. Let me take you somewhere, he said. Her brows lifted slightly. To see what? Your sister. Liana froze, not visibly but inwardly, where emotion lived before it surfaced. No one outside her world had ever spoken Tasha's name as something that mattered. What are you saying? She asked quietly. That I know she's why you work the hours you do, he said. I know she's why you don't eat full meals, why you don't rest. His voice remained steady, not demanding, not pitying. I'd like to meet her, he said, if that's something you would allow. Permission, not authority, not rescue, not ownership, permission. Liana breathed once, slowly. She's not something to impress anyone, she said. I'm not here to be impressed, he replied. They stood in the late afternoon light, neither moving. Then Liana nodded. All right. The drive into the south side was quiet, not uncomfortable, just quiet. City lights changed from glass towers to brick walls, from manicured lawns to faded storefronts. Liana didn't explain the neighborhood. Carter didn't ask questions. They walked up to the apartment slowly. She unlocked the door, stepping in first. Inside, the living room was small but warm. A television played softly. A girl, thin and bundled in blankets, lay curled on the couch, her eyes bright with curiosity when she saw them. "Tasha," Liana said gently. "This is Carter." For the first time since Liana had met him, Carter smiled, softly, without guard. "It's nice to meet you," he said. Tasha blinked once, then smiled back. "You're the man from the big house," she said simply. Carter nodded. "Yes." "Do you have soup?" she asked. He blinked. "Soup?" "She likes soup," Liana explained, the faintest warmth in her tone. "It's the only thing that doesn't make her sick." Carter nodded once. "Then I'll get soup." He left the apartment and returned 10 minutes later, carrying bags from the market down the street. 3 kinds of soup, fresh bread, ginger tea. Tasha laughed softly. "You bought too much." "No," Carter said. "Just enough." Liana watched him. Not the food, not the gesture, but the way he placed each item gently on the small kitchen counter, as though the space deserved respect, simply because it mattered to her. Something moved in her chest, quiet, real, not love, but the beginning of something that could become it. Night fell. Carter drove them back in silence, but the silence had changed. It wasn't distance anymore, it was understanding. They returned to the mansion late, after the city had quieted and the streetlights glowed like small moons along the avenue. Liana stepped out of the car first, the kind of clear that came after storms, gentle, washed, honest. Carter stepped outside. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. She felt his presence the way one feels a shift in temperature. "I'm sorry," he said, not for what he had done, for what she had endured. Liana set the broom aside. She didn't fidget. She didn't avoid his eyes. "For what?" "For letting things happen that should not have," he said. He stood with his hands in his pockets, not because he was casual, but because he didn't know what else to do with them. "Brooks is gone," he said. She nodded once. No triumph, no relief, just acknowledgement. "I didn't ask for that," she said. "I know." Silence settled between them, steady, not empty. "But I won't pretend he didn't matter to you," she continued. "Losing someone like that leaves a mark." Carter looked at her, surprise flickering behind his eyes. Not because she was wrong, but because she had seen something most people never noticed. "He was my friend," he said. "And you chose something that mattered more than him," she replied. Her voice held no accusation, only truth. Carter looked down at the ground, jaw tightening. He exhaled slowly, the breath leaving him like weight. He didn't answer, because there was nothing to defend. Liana turned to go back inside. "Wait," she paused. "Let me take you somewhere," he said. Her brows lifted slightly. "To see what?" "Your sister." Liana froze, not visibly, but inwardly, where emotion lived before it surfaced. No one outside her world had ever spoken Tasha's name as something that mattered. "What are you saying?" she asked quietly. "That I know she's why you work the hours you do," he said. "I know she's why you don't eat full meals, why you don't rest." His voice remained steady, not demanding, not pitying. "I'd like to meet her," he said, "if that's something you would allow." Permission, not authority, not rescue, not ownership. Permission. Liana breathed once, slowly. "She's not something to impress anyone," she said. "I'm not here to be impressed," he replied. They stood in the late afternoon light, neither moving. Then Liana nodded. "All right." The drive into the south side was quiet, not uncomfortable, just quiet. City lights changed from glass towers to brick walls, from manicured lawns to faded storefronts. Liana didn't explain the neighborhood. Carter didn't ask questions. They walked up to the apartment slowly. She unlocked the door, stepping in first. Inside, the living room was small but warm. A television played softly. A girl, thin and bundled in blankets, lay curled on the couch, her eyes bright with curiosity when she saw them. "Tasha," Liana said gently, "this is Carter." For the first time since Liana had met him, Carter smiled, softly, without guard. "It's nice to meet you," he said. Tasha blinked once, then smiled back. "You're the man from the big house," she said simply. Carter nodded. "Yes." "Do you have soup?" she asked. He blinked. "Soup?" "She likes soup," Liana explained, the faintest warmth in her tone. "It's the only thing that doesn't make her sick." Carter nodded once. "Then I'll get soup." He left the apartment and returned 10 minutes later, carrying bags from the market down the street. 3 kinds of soup, fresh bread, ginger tea. Tasha laughed softly. "You bought too much." "No," Carter said. "Just enough." Liana watched him. Not the food, not the gesture, but the way he placed each item gently on the small kitchen counter, as though the space deserved respect simply because it mattered to her. Something moved in her chest. Quiet. Real. Not love. But the beginning of something that could become it. Night fell. Carter drove them back in silence, but the silence had changed. It wasn't distance anymore. It was understanding. They returned to the mansion late, after the city had quieted and the streetlights glowed like small moons along the avenue. Liana stepped out of the car first, the night air cool against her skin. She walked a few paces ahead, as she always did, leaving him space to be who he was. But Carter didn't stay behind this time. He followed, stopping beside her beneath the arch of the entryway lantern light. "Liana." She turned. He didn't reach for her, didn't step closer, didn't rush the moment. He simply spoke. "I used to think silence was strength. That distance kept me safe, that caring for anything only gave life a place to break me." His voice did not crack, but it was not the same voice she had known. "You didn't break anything," he said. "You opened something I thought was gone." Liana held his gaze, her breath soft in the night. "And I was wrong about you," he added quietly. "From the very beginning." She didn't look away. "I know," she said. It wasn't forgiveness. It was truth. He nodded once, accepting the weight of it. Then he stepped back, not away, but to give her the freedom to choose what came next. And she walked inside the house beside him. Not behind, not beneath, beside. Weeks passed gently. Tasha's health stabilized with treatment. The staff adjusted to the new rhythm of the house. Carter learned how to speak small things. "Good morning, did you sleep? Eat with us tonight. Stay. Not orders, not requests. Presence." Liana learned how to accept small care without fearing the cost. She no longer worked to disappear into corners. She moved through the house as though she belonged, not because Carter gave her a place, but because she had always deserved one. Evelyn Hale, however, did not yield easily. One afternoon, she confronted her son in the front parlor. "You are ruining everything," she said, voice sharp as crystal. "Your image, your reputation, your future, for a girl who offers nothing." Carter didn't argue. He didn't defend. He didn't raise his voice. He simply asked, "When exactly did we learn to measure a person's worth by what they can be used for?" His mother fell silent, because she remembered when, and it was a memory that belonged to his father. Liana stood in the hallway, unseen, finally understanding. Carter was not the one who needed saving from loneliness. He needed saving from inheritance, from the coldness he had been trained to carry like armor, and she had done that without trying to, just by being who she was. Spring came, the garden bloomed, the house breathed differently, windows open, light everywhere. Liana stood on the back lawn one morning, watching Tasha pick late-blooming flowers along the path. The world felt held together for once, not by force, but by care. Carter walked toward her. No hesitation now, no distance, no pretense. When he reached her, he didn't speak at first. He just stood beside her, the way he had learned to, not claiming, not demanding, simply present. "She's laughing again," he said. "She is," Liana replied, warmth softening her voice. Carter looked at her then, really looked, not with curiosity, not with restraint, with recognition. "You never stole anything from me," he said. "Not my attention, not my peace, not my heart." He took a quiet breath. "I gave them to you, because I wanted to." Liana's eyes softened, sunlight catching in them like reflection on water. She didn't answer right away. Then she said the only thing that was true, "I know." He didn't kiss her. He didn't need to. The moment was whole without it. The breeze moved past them, warm and alive. Some stories change the world loudly, some do it quietly. This was the second kind, the kind where two lives shift toward one another so gently the world doesn't notice the exact moment it happens, only that everything is different after,